get into that. For the large part, there's the Kurdish rebels who've kind of created their own area with the assistance of the United States. They call themselves the Syrian Defense Forces, if I understand that correctly. And they're largely kind of backed by the United States. And HTS, Hayat Tahrir Sham, they were formerly a group affiliated with Al-Qaeda. They've publicly declared disavowal from Al-Qaeda. And so they're kind of supported by Turkey or slash America. What's different about this offensive is that it seems like all the rebels did this in coordination. Is that correct? That's what we're hearing from the reports that we're receiving.
All right. I want to, if I can, before I answer your question, just kind of give a little bit of background and some of the elements that you mentioned in your question. The first thing is that the Kurds are not really rebels because they do work alongside the government of Bashar al-Assad. The 2016 siege of Aleppo wasn't possible without Kurdish militia forces doing their part in maintaining around 30% of the siege from their own territory. So no one considers them to be rebels. They have a level of autonomy in the areas in which they control, but they're not rebels. Okay. They're not, by any stretch of the imagination. Actually, when the Turkish forces want to attack the Kurds frequently will take down the Kurdish flag from some of their headquarters and put up the Syrian flag so that Turkey wouldn't attack it, because that would be like attacking Bashar al-Assad, and the two don't attack each other. So I just want to kind of make that nuance there. Second thing, Hayat Tahrir Sham being Al-Qaeda. I'm just going to tell it to you, and maybe everybody may want to accept or not accept what I'm getting ready to say. I don't like Abu Muhammad Jolani, and I never really have. I don't think that he himself as a leader is sincere to the Islamic project. I don't, and most Syrians don't think so either. After having said that, Abu Muhammad Jolani was never really Al-Qaeda. He declared his allegiance to Al-Qaeda because he had a beef with ISIS at the time and he needed Islamic legitimacy. That's why he declared himself to be, wait a minute, no, I'm Al-Qaeda. But in reality, Al-Qaeda never had control of him, and he was never really Al-Qaeda. And I challenge anybody who could bring something different than that, who actually knows the situation. Okay, now that we got past that.
Well, I mean, that's a pretty big statement, though, that you, in terms of that, you don't see Jolani as someone who is interested in or is aligned with Islam 100%. Is that something that what you're hinting at, that he's not in it entirely for Islam? There's some personal ambitions involved.
Well, I'm not hinting at it. I'm saying up front and close. For example, Hayat Tahrir Sham, in the territory in which they govern, torture is rampant. Indefinite detention is there as well. They crack down hard on dissension, and they create monopolies on essential products. Now, all of these are all impermissible in Islam. Now, when they were in a competition with ISIS, they were very quick to say, let's go to an Islamic court to settle our differences. Let's go to an Islamic court to settle our differences. Once they seized power, all of that talk and rhetoric totally stopped. Now, after having said that part, I want to make sure that your listeners and watchers understand something. Hayat Tahrir Sham is only a part of this offensive in which you're seeing. There are thousands of troops that are not a part of Hayat Tahrir Sham. It's billed up in the media as a Hayat Tahrir Sham operation because it makes it easier for people to simply denounce it as a bunch of terrorists who are at it again. But that's not the case. That's not remotely the case. There are many different groups, and they're all working together, which is something that we never really see. And that's definitely a step in the right direction. So no, Hayat Tahrir Sham is not a popular group here in Syria, but they did initiate this attack, although they are not in full control of the attack. Nor are they the ones who are totally orchestrating this attack. It's in a ghurfat mushtarika. The different groups are together, and their leadership is there, and they are working towards, making this territory a more governable territory and getting rid of the regime of Assad.
So, Akhi Bilal, just a couple things here. If Jolani is not loyal to the Islamic cause, right? Would it be safe to say is it more nationalism for him? Is it more just power hungriness? And that would be my first question. Number two, also, so since you also mentioned as a follow-up to that, if there are other groups working, how are we able to differentiate between the two? Because there's numerous videos coming out on Twitter. I try to keep up with, whatever's coming out. And there's a video that recently came out about in Suleymaniya where there's Christians who live there, and they're saying that we've been treated well, and they've been giving us food and making provisions for us for our holidays. And so I'm trying to and for myself and for the listeners to see, how do we know who these groups are and where they're operating?
Okay, I want to make sure that this is clear. What city are you guys?
Chicago.
Chicago. Okay. Chicago knows a lot about mafia, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. I'm from New York.
Okay.
Going back some years ago, there was a notorious mobster. His name was John Gotti. He was involved in racketeering, murder, everything that you could possibly think of. But he donated money to a hospital. Okay, that's a good thing. And nobody's going to take that away from him. But he got some other stuff that he needed to deal with. Do you understand? You asked the question, what is Jolani in it for? Nationalism? No. Power? Yes. The issue is that what was narrated to me many years ago was that, Bilal, you don't know Jolani. Jolani is the type of person that if he can rule with the Sharia of Islam, he would be happy. If he doesn't rule with the Sharia of Islam, he will be happy. The important thing for him is that he's in charge and he's ruling. And I have found that to be the absolute truth and the reality of Abu Muhammad Jolani. Now, once again, I don't want to get too sidetracked and make this whole thing about him, because it's not. This rebel push is about much more than Jolani and Hayat Tahrir Sham. They're only a part of it. But I do think that what you've got to do is, somebody said something that was important one time, that if you want to understand a people, just see how they treat the weakest people in their society, i.e. their prisoners. If you find a people treat their prisoners with justice, then you got yourself some just people. If you've got some people who don't treat their prisoners with justice, they have no means to free themselves, they're under torture, some of them die under torture, and then you go out on Eid Day and pass out sweets because it shows that he has a good heart. No, that ain't the criterion that we use.
Sure.
And I'm not saying that you're saying that. I'm just saying is that,
sure.
I'm just putting it in these terms so that it's clear.
No, understood. And so I guess that goes back to my second follow-up question. How do we, for example, we're seeing videos of minority villages, and there's and again, I try not to be, we're taught to have husn al-dhan, but then you have to be skeptical because there's a lot of powers at play here, right? But there's videos of elderly Christian women saying that we've been treated well, they're opening the food market for us. And so how do I know whether that's HTS or if it's some other group, or how do we differentiate between these factions?
But you see, but here's the thing. Do I believe that Abu Muhammad Jolani wants those Christian minorities to be treated well? Yes. Why not? They're not a threat to his rule, and they're not trying to tell him who to torture and who not to torture. So he has no beef with them. So of course, with the eyes of the world watching, it's going to be such that treat them well, especially Christians. Hello, are you guys watching this?
Yeah.
Okay. But then when it comes to the Muslims who are languishing in their prisons, brother, it ain't the same thing.
Mm.
And it's well documented. I'm not talking about a couple of people here know this. Everybody here knows it. It's not a secret. It's not even a guarded secret or a kept secret. It's not a secret at all. So, maybe a lot of people, maybe outside of the country, they don't know him. He's got a beard. He looks Islamic. The brothers are saying Allahu Akbar. Now, a lot of those brothers that are with him are well-intending brothers. They are. And some of them are in it for Islamic reasons. But that doesn't mean that he is.
Mm. Yeah. No, I think that makes perfect sense. And I think part of, since the beginning of it, I think a lot of Muslims have woken up to the reality that because people chant slogans and look a certain way, it doesn't necessarily mean that they are practicing.
One of the
Muslims.
things, Mort, is that people in the beginning of the war had their hearts attached to many of these groups. People like me, who saw some people in this conflict as heroes, and they turned out not to be heroes. And so we don't want to be burned like that again. True. And that's why we have Brother Bilal here, so that he can kind of sift through and show us, like, hey, to show us like where we may go wrong.
Yes. So